Don't worry about this Philistine, David told Saul. I'll go fight him. Don't be ridiculous, Saul replied. There's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth. But David persisted. I've been taking care of my father's sheep and goats, he said. When a lion or a bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I've done this to both lions and bears. I'll do it to this pagan Philistine, for he has defied the armies of the living God. And David went to meet the Philistine, and the sling was in his hand, and he said to the giant, today the Lord will conquer you, and I will kill you. I will cut off your head, and then I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and wild animals, and the whole world will know there's a God in Israel. As David moved closer to attack, as Goliath moved closer to attack, David quickly ran out to meet him. Reaching into his shepherd's bag and taking out a stone, he hurled it with his sling and hit the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank in, and Goliath stumbled and fell face down on the ground. And little David saw it all before it even happened. He told Goliath exactly what was about to happen, because he already knew. He could already taste it. He could already see the stone sinking in to the giant's head. He told Saul what had happened in his past and what was about to happen in his present. You know why he was so confident in telling Saul and Goliath what he was about to do? Because all morning he'd been telling himself what he was about to do. David knew what God could do. David knew what he could do. And he was ready to do it. And something about that kind of bold faith created a shift in the momentum. The momentum that had been completely in the giant's favor for 40 days and 40 nights. For the first time, somebody's not afraid. Somebody believes in themselves, and they seem to believe in this God of theirs. Momentum shifted, and it rose as David sprang and ran to meet him. Years later, David's son would write in the Proverbs, the righteous are as bold as a lion. He learned that from watching his father. You will not hear David, here or anywhere else, talking to himself the way, sadly, a whole lot of other people talk to themselves. You won't hear David saying to himself the kinds of things that Saul said to him. Don't be ridiculous. You're just a boy. Go back to the sheep fields, son, where you belong, where it's safe. You won't hear David saying those things to himself or about himself. You won't hear him saying the kinds of things about himself that Goliath said to him. What did Goliath say to him? What if somebody spoke these kind of words to you? 1 Samuel 17, beginning in verse 41. Goliath walked out toward David with his shield bearer ahead of him, sneering in contempt at this ruddy-faced boy. Sneering. Am I a dog, he roared at David, that you come at me with a stick? He cursed David by the names of his gods. "Come over here. I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals," Goliath yelled. Has anybody ever talked to you that rough? Anybody from your world, your life? Anybody you encountered? Whether they have or not, I know this. Somebody has talked to you very much like that more than once, and they've probably done it 1,001 times. It's a giant that doesn't live down in a valley somewhere. He lives in the low places of your soul, and he roars inside you. And he'll talk to you, that inner giant will. And he'll tell you how ridiculous you are for thinking you're going to actually follow through on this new diet and exercise plan you started. He'll say it's January 6th, and yeah, you ate right, and you exercised for 6 days. But it's not going to last. You know it doesn't last, don't you? It never has. It never will. Your yesterday is just what your tomorrow is going to be. Don't be ridiculous. Do you really think you can change? Do you really think you can keep this up? You think you're going to start controlling that tongue of yours? The one that's always spouting off stuff? Don't kid yourself. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. You'll never be anything else. Your tomorrow is going to be just like your yesterday. Don't be ridiculous. You don't even belong in this valley with this man. There's 101 things we could talk about from the story of David and Goliath. It's been my favorite since I was a little bitty boy. But here's the one I want to focus on this morning. I want to show you that David's mind was programmed better than that, different from that. There may have been a giant on the outside shouting insults, but inside there was a bold young man who believed in his God and believed in himself. Think about the way David talked. Yeah, he's big. Yeah, I'm small, but the bear was big and so was the lion. I took the lion by his beard and I clubbed him to death, and this Philistine will be like the lion and the bear. David had already developed a very deep understanding of who he was, maybe because nobody ever put those negative, self-defeating thoughts in his head to start with. David didn't go to school. His school was the outdoors. He spent all of his early days alone on the hillside, watching his father's sheep. That was his classroom. And he learned to play the harp and sing songs to God. And he learned to use a sling. And he got so good that he could hit a running rabbit. And David learned who he was, and David knew who he was, and thank God nobody was there to mess up his mind, but somebody probably was there to mess with yours. There were plenty of people there to mess with mine. Shoot, by the time I was 12 years old, there was a giant living in me that loved to bellow out insults, negative, self-defeating thoughts, telling me insulting things about my body, about my habits, about my discipline or lack of it, reminding me of my embarrassing past, predicting a dismal future. A giant that said over and over, "You're not good enough. You'll never be more than this. This is as good as it's going to get. Don't expect change, and that way you won't be disappointed. Just stay down. If you stay down, at least you won't fall." Ooh. You see, all of us have an inner dialogue, voice in the head. The voice in the head that's always interpreting everything we see, everything we hear, giving a running commentary on everything that's happening. And for a lot of us, that voice is not an affirming, loving, confidence-building voice from God. It's a dirty Philistine giant who sneers and mocks. I want you to be aware that you're constantly telling yourself a story about who you are. And I am too. You're constantly telling yourself a story about who you are and who you're not. About what you're doing in this world, a story about your worth, a story about your value, a story about your competence. And what story you tell yourself over and over and over through the years will either build you up or it can tear you down depending on what kind of story it is. The right kind of story, one that comes from God, one that's based on truth and hope and faith, is going to build you up. You're going to have an ever-increasing confidence in God and in yourself, because you're going to attempt and tackle things you didn't think you could handle, and some of the time you're going to win. And each time you win, your confidence grows and your faith grows. But if you've been subjugated by that inner Goliath, every time a new opportunity comes or a new challenge, new problem arises, he's going to say things that melt your heart. Just like Goliath's voice shook and crippled that Israelite army. The Bible says when they heard him, they were terrified and deeply shaken. Can you imagine waking up every morning for 40 days in a row, looking out at the biggest man you've ever seen, knowing you wouldn't want to fight him, and listening to what he tells you over and over? Come on. Step up. That's what I thought. Stay down. Stay down. Barrage of insults coming from within you. The barrage of bellowing from Goliath. He was. You know what he was doing? He was trash talking them like in a basketball game. He was defeating them before the battle ever started. That's what the insults, the sneers, the mockery was all about. But David, because he had a different kind of self-talk in his mind, he experienced just the opposite. He won the battle. He could see the win before it ever started. You know, we're not all there yet, are we? I think some of you probably are. And I'm moving in that direction. And the closer I get to that place, the more life is like a song, and the more I can laugh at the giants and what they say. if we listen too long, too hard to the taunts of the giant, though, it'll sabotage everything we get involved in. Say, finally get in a good relationship. After all these that went wrong, finally get somebody, you love them, and they really love you as much as you love them. This is good. This is healthy. But then the giant sneers, yeah, but wait until they get to know you a little better. Wait until they find out who you really are. You'll get rejected and dropped. You know, some people cannot accept good things because they don't feel they deserve them. And they somehow think that's holy or impressive to God, to tell God and other people what scumbags they are. You've complimented people before, haven't you, who could not accept a compliment if you handed it to them on a silver tray? Because no matter what compliment you give them, you mean it. You mean it. It's true. They'll say something like this: "Oh, but it wasn't me. It wasn't me. Or it was just a lucky fluke that I managed to get that right." There are people who cannot accept good things. And those are the same people who cannot really accept the grace of God. Because grace is a gift. It's not about whether you deserve it. Learn to accept grace from God. Learn to accept gifts. Somebody compliments you, say thank you. I agree. Practice that. After a while, you won't even have to say I agree out loud. You can just say thank you, and something deep inside says, you know, this is a pretty smart person talking to me right now. Let's flip it around. Think about the person you love most. Person you love most. You want what's best for them. Do you enjoy it? Do you get a kick out of it? Does it warm your heart to hear them expressing how pathetic and worthless they are? Is that really what you want to hear from them? Does that help anybody? You know, if you hear that from somebody you care about, it's not true. It's way out of touch with reality. It's not true. It's not healthy. It's not helpful. Well, you recognize that when people you love talk trash to themselves. Well, God loves you. Do you really think God wants to hear you tell him what a dirtbag you are? I think I know the kind of talk that God appreciated and actually reinforced in David. It's the talk that says, yeah, that's a pretty big giant right there. But I know already what I can do. I know what God has done for me, and I know what gifts he's given me, and I know how I've developed those gifts, and I know how to handle this. Yes, that was me who took the lion by the beard and clubbed him to death. That was me. It was me who fought the bear, and it's me who's going to kill this Philistine and cut off his head and feed him to the birds. Let's think of it another way. This afternoon, it's a beautiful day. You decide to go out riding four-wheelers with the family. You're going a little too fast. You hit a bump, crash into a T-post. that sticks in your stomach and comes out the back, small of your back, right through your intestines. You hit it so hard you knocked it down, but it's still there. And your friends grab you up. They don't even dare take the T-post out. You and the T-post go to the emergency room. When the emergency room doctor walks into the room and sees you standing there, you won't be laying, with a T-post coming out of both sides, what do you want that emergency room doctor to be telling herself? What if her internal dialogue goes something like this? You're not a good doctor, let's be honest. You barely got through med school. And when you interned, it was obvious to everybody that you just didn't have the knack for this. It's probably a mistake that you're even here. And this poor patient with the T-post coming out of both sides, they need the best doctor they can get, and all they've got is you. Do you really want your doctor telling herself that as she gets ready to work on you? Is that the voice you want your doctor listening to? Do you think the rest of us want you listening to voices like that when we're counting on you? Do you think the people who love you want you soaking in that kind of sloppy, messy, stinking thinking? Do you? Or do you think we'd rather you be saying something a little more hopeful about yourself, about your future? Something that's actually going to make a positive difference in the way your life goes? What do you say to yourself when you talk to yourself? I want to give you an example of what Jerry Sickler says to himself every morning, and he says this throughout the day. I want you to hear him rattle it off.
Right at this very moment, every atom and cell of my body is in the process of being recreated in the same and perfect way that God created me. Just so that this body can be at ease and in perfect peace to accomplish the will and the work of my Father.
How's that compared to, I'll never get over this one. Yesterday is what tomorrow is going to bring. I want to give you some practical techniques, just a couple of practical techniques that you can implement easily, starting today. Techniques, things you can actually do when your inner giant begins to roar and sneer and mock and defeat you. Here's the first one. The minute you recognize that recording playing in your head, you're not good enough, you're not gonna make it, the minute you hear whatever the sneering giant says, stop, grab a piece of paper, and write down what the voice is saying. We're talking about what your mind is playing over and over. Write it down. There's power, you've heard me say this before, there's power in getting something out of your head that's just swimming and darting around, hard to even grab hold of. But what you can do is when you take that thought and you write it on a piece of paper, you just captured it. You've now got it in a place where it can't move. Write down what you just heard the giant tell you. And then take an objective look. And if you can't be objective, if you write it down and you still believe it, call somebody who cares about you, somebody who knows you, and say, here's what my mind is telling me about myself. What do you think? They'll chuckle, or they may cry, and then they're going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you the truth is, it's not you who's ridiculous. It's this thought. It's this recording that's so absurd. This negative, self-defeating comment. Do you know what? The voices in your head, those insulting, defeating voices in our heads, they're not even intelligent. They're not creative. They're not original. The only thing they know how to do is just poo-poo all over you. They're good at that because they've been doing it for years, but that's about as original as they can get. They're like a trained parrot in a cage. You don't deserve this. You're not worthy. Get back where you belong. Get back to the sheep. You can't keep this up. Write that down. I can't keep this up. Well, I kept it up for 6 days running, haven't I? When you look at it on the page, I can't keep this up. Oh, but I am keeping it up. And what I can do for 6 days, I can do again today. And today, I do it. Today, I get on my elliptical machine and I ride. Today, I eat food that is healthy for my body, only that which fuels me. Today, I'm in control of my mouth. Today, I'm in control of my temper. Today, I speak good, helpful, uplifting things to my spouse, to my children. Today I go into the office and I'm smiling and it's contagious. Today I go in to work to win. And each day I do that. Each day I do that, I get stronger. And the new habit, the roots of that new habit go deeper. I've already slain a lion and a bear for 6 days running. Today's going to be the same. Rewrite it. Rewrite those things. Rewrite it in a way that honors you. Rewrite it, listen, ladies especially, rewrite it in a way that honors your body rather than a way that insults your body. And if there's a person on the outside in your life who consistently insults that body of yours, either in the relationship or they can change it, they can quit it. But draw a line there. You don't listen to this. Not from the inside or anybody on the outside. You don't need that. Write it down and rewrite it the way it ought to be. 2 Corinthians 10:5. 2 Corinthians 10:5. Here's what the Bible says. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. Are there any arguments you need to demolish today? We take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. One way you take the thought captive is you take it out of your head and slap it on a piece of paper where it can't move. And then you recognize Christ in you, the hope of glory. And you begin to change your thoughts. And as you do, you change your life. And when you change your life, you change your destiny. And the destiny of some of the people around you. And here's one other practical technique. This comes from an old rabbinic tradition. Practical technique. This is something you can do before the thoughts ever come. You can do this when you get home today. Take 2 pieces of paper. And on one piece of paper, the first one, write these words. I come from dust. That sound familiar? Dust thou art, unto dust thou will return. That's scientifically true. Your body is made of the same elements that you'll find in the soil, in the plants you eat, that fed the cow you ate, and all of that is what made you. I'm made of dust. What that can do is that can bring you down to earth and back into a healthy, realistic understanding of yourself if you're one of those people who's got the opposite problem of what I'm talking about today. Yours is that your head swells so much that you almost float above the rest of us. And big head, arrogant, and you need a piece of paper that will remind you, I come from dust. But on another piece of paper, write these words. Second piece of paper, write, this world was made for me. This world was made for me. What do I mean by that? Do you ever experience something beautiful, something divine, that reminds you God is there, that reminds you you matter, something that's there sticking out to you, and it's like it was placed there especially for you? Yesterday morning, I was sitting and studying by the window, and I looked out the window. I do that a lot. And the sun was shining bright against a powder baby blue sky. So bright that I couldn't look at it. But then the sun moved just a little, and it nestled in behind a pine top. High in the very bushy tip top of a big short leaf pine tree. And the way the sun hung there for about 3 minutes in that location allowed me to look at the sun, which I can't normally do because it shielded the overwhelming brightness. But enough of the glory was beaming through those pine needles that it was like looking at a burning bush. And it just thrilled me. And the first thing I wanted to do is holler for my wife or one of the boys, come look at this. Come look at what I'm looking at. And I said, no, you know what? That's just for me. I appreciate that. I'm not sure anybody else would. I'm going to take that as a gift. I'm going to receive that as a gift. Now let me ask you this. Did anybody else on the planet see the sun yesterday? Only about 7 billion of them did. Of course they all saw the sun, but guess what? Nobody else saw the sun from my chair, through that pine tree, in that moment, in that way. And I sensed something beautiful and divine made for me. So you get a piece of paper, one that says, I come from dust. You get another that says, this world was made for me. You put one in each pocket, and you keep one in each pocket, and then you pull out whichever you need. in the course of your day. Chances are, most of us are going to have to more often pull out the one that says, this world was made for me. I know why I'm here. I know who I am. I'm a character in a beautiful story. I'm on a hero's journey. That's who you are. You are a son or a daughter of the living God. So learn to talk like it. And as you do, you'll learn to live like it. You'll learn to talk and live the way David did. And there'll be a dead giant laying in the valley floor at the bottom of your soul.